So I've had the 987 Cayman S for about a week. Let's talk about my first impressions with it. So in that week, I've put 730 miles on the car. I picked it up last Thursday, pretty late. The car was in Connecticut. I drove it back to Delaware. That was about 200 miles with the route I took to get back. And it was mostly just highway cruising. And the car did pretty well. I mean, it is a very comfortable car. It does ride pretty decent. I think it's got like a 1 or 2 inch lowering spring on it. But it does seem to still ride pretty good. It doesn't feel like a super slammed car like my Corvette did, and I think the suspension is designed a little better and overall just feels better. But we went from there. I got it registered on Friday. It did set a CAT code that I just cleared and was gonna hope for the best, and it hasn't come back on. And I put 732 miles on it in this amount of time. So Friday we went down to Ocean City for cruise week, and then I've been dailying it to work every day since. So first impressions, it does seem like a really, really, really good car. It's not like anything I've had before. It doesn't really compare to the Lotus in a lot of ways. It's not much like the Corvette. The similarities kind of end with, okay, they have 2 seats and they're very impractical. They were kind of like more pure sports cars, more of a pure sports car than like a 911 would be. And even the Evora kind of falls a little more into that GT category. But overall, like I do like it. It just feels like something's missing, and I can't figure out what that is. It is a Cayman S, so it has a little more power. It has the 3.4 instead of the 2.7 or 2.9, I think it was. And I kind of think maybe that's what's missing is coming from the V8 world and having, a big 460 wheel horsepower V8. Everything is going to feel slow, and I know that, but this still is kind of underwhelming. The Lotus was way slower than the Corvette too, but I think it's geared so aggressively, and the supercharger and the noise and everything else going on around you, that it kind of distracts you from the fact that the car does not go that fast. I never realized how slow that car was until I would give people rides in it, and I'm like, wow, we haven't even hit 100 yet, where the Corvette would have been going well over 100 by that point. But that's not what that car is for. That car is meant to be a good GT car that you can also track, similar to this. That being said, the Lotus is way faster than this in a straight line. This feels like almost like a really fancy Miata, but I do like it. I'm sort of on the fence of like how much I want to keep it. Like, I definitely don't love it. I think if somebody offered me what I paid for it, plus my taxes and registration costs, they could probably have it for that amount of money, and I wouldn't try to fight them for a little more. But I do think if I put a good sticky tire on it and took it to the track, it might change my opinion. The car is on a 500 treadwear all-season tire, so it's definitely not in the best condition to push it. And I think the other concern with that is I haven't pushed this car hard on the street because I know it's not on the best tire for that kind of driving, and I don't want to put myself in a position where I crash this car. Like, I would say my E90 is a little more fun, but some of that fun comes from the fact that I don't care if it slides into a curb or into a barrier or into a wall or into a tree, where this car, like, I would be pretty upset if that were to happen. Strictly because of the fact that I paid 10 times the amount I paid for the E90 for this car. So there's that. But it does seem good, and I think compared to the Corvette, it's a totally different car, and I may make a video that goes a little deeper into that, even though I don't have another C5. But when you would drive the Corvette, especially if you try to drive it fast, it didn't want to turn in. It had very, very weird steering response. Everything was very vague, and it felt like the car wanted to kill you, and you were just actively like trying not to crash when you drove that car. It drove great in a straight line, but actually trying to like drive fast around a road course was like a constant battle, and that was one thing that I realized with my other cars that was just not the case. This car doesn't seem to have that problem. You turn the wheel, the car turns. It feels super balanced through the entire turn, which is not something that I can say I felt before. And I almost wonder if that's what the missing feeling is that like, I don't know if I'd call it fear or just nervousness of like, what's this car going to do? so far this car has done everything I told it to do, and it makes me wonder, like, is the limit so high that I'm not going to hit it on the street, and I will only really fully enjoy this car on a good tire with a good brake pad on a track, especially like a higher speed twisty track, not one like NJMP that's like kind of power heavy. But we'll see. You know, it is only May. It's the beginning of May. This could be a good little summer fling, a good summer toy that I sell next spring or whatever. Maybe I trade it for another Lotus, who knows. But speaking of the Lotus, this car compared to that, as far as cornering, the Lotus has the best steering feel of any car I have ever been in, by far. You feel absolutely everything in that car. Whether it is a bump in the road or the car starting to understeer, you will feel it through the steering. That car has incredibly responsive steering. Anything you do with the wheel, the car is going to do, and you will feel all of the feedback from it, front and rear. That was my first impression when I drove the first Evora that I looked at, and it was mind-blowing to me, and from that moment on, I was like, no, I need this car. This car is a little more isolated, which I would say for most people is a good thing, because like I said, you feel every groove, every bump. Like that little pothole I just hit, or a little chip in the road, would have jerked the wheel in the Lotus, because it somehow has no isolated feelings at all. But that car, you know, on turn-in, would turn in great. It would start to understeer a little bit, which makes sense because all the weight's in the back, but you could feel the V6 really trying to pull the back of that car around. I think overall that engine was heavier than the flat 6 that's in this, and obviously the flat 6 is way shorter profile-wise than a supercharged V6, and that car had a steel rear subframe. So it kind of had a lot of things working against it as far as rear grip goes, and that's probably why it felt like it wants to come around a little bit, but not in like a scary way. Not like the Corvette where you don't know when it's going to snap, it's just going to snap oversteer on you. That car would start to slide, but in like a playful way. Like you could kind of slide it around a tight track without, you know, going too fast or doing anything super dangerous. This car doesn't feel like that either. This car just feels like it's going to turn in and it's going to go. It is, as a lot of people have said, robotically precise, and kind of in a way like lacks the charm of a sketchy car. And like it almost feels like that's what I'm like longing for, is like this weird sketchy feeling that this car just doesn't have, which is because it is a very nice car that is very well designed. It's just a feeling I'm not used to, I guess. It's almost like those people that are, you know, in sketchy relationships and they're like, they get in a good one and like, this isn't right, and they go back to like abusive situations. Like that's almost how I feel about this car and my Corvette. Like, I don't know, we'll see. Whenever the Lotus gets back from Body Shop Purgatory, I will make a good comparison video side by side. Like I said, even though it's a little bit of an apples to oranges comparison, they are similar cars in the sense that they're both very impractical. It's nice having a frunk that the Lotus doesn't have, but you know, we'll do some comparisons, we'll make some more content. But yeah, that's my initial thoughts on the car after a week of ownership and roughly 750 miles. So thank you for watching.